All right, thank you. I'm very happy to be here. As I said, I'm Garrett Kenyon. I'm from Los Alamos. I have a subtitle which is in the form of a question, synthetic cognition and a neuromorphic agent. So that question is actually motivated by this headline that I bet a lot of you saw. It turns out neuroscientists made a bet with philosophers about 25 years ago that we neuroscientists would understand consciousness by now. And so it's generally been reported that we've lost that bet, although I think we understand a thermostat, so I don't know, we understand the consciousness of the thermostat. Okay, but I'm going to say that I think we might be actually a lot closer, maybe not to consciousness, whatever, I agree with Russell that that's hard to define, but maybe some forms of synthetic cognition are possible. But the problem is the bet's timed out, so we need more time. So 25 years? Oh, I missed that. Thank you. Okay, I was just going to ask for 3. I was going to invoke COVID. I was going to say, you know, the great COVID excuse. You know, we should get 3 more years as neuroscientists, right? Because COVID was sort of unfair. Okay, so why am I optimistic that even in 3 years, I think we've got a shot at making real progress on this problem? And actually, my optimism stems really from this, what I regard as seminal paper from Benjamin Salier and Yoshio Bengio. And what these authors propose is that we can build classifiers not from feed-forward neural networks, but from auto-associative memories, or hopfield models. As you see on the right, they've actually organized a hopfield model as what I like to call a deep hopfield model, but they've organized it in a way that it actually looks a lot like a feed-forward neural net. But it's not a feed-forward neural net. It has top-down connections. And that has profound implications for how this model works. In particular, the output of this model, called Y here, so if we imagine putting in an image of a cat at the bottom, so the cat would be X, and it goes through some hidden layers, and now maybe my cat detector starts to ramp up. Well, in these deep hopfield models, that cat detector is going to feed back into the network and turn on cat features. So how the deep hopfield model represents the world is dependent on what it thinks about the world, what it thinks the world is, what it thinks the content is. And this, of course, is something as neuroscientists we've known all along, but now is beginning to enter machine learning, and I think it's going to have transformative implications. So how would we train these models? How would we train those hidden layers? So one approach would be, I'll call it the brute force approach. Okay, we'll just take that deep hopfield model and replicate it multiple times. We'll make 400 copies of it, one for each time step that we want to simulate. And now we've turned our deep hopfield model back into a feed-forward neural net. You know, because the activity of every neuron in the model only depends on the activity on the previous time step. So since it's now a a very big feed-forward neural net, we can now train it with ordinary backprop. Okay, so that works. I'll show you some examples in a moment that works. But that's not a very viable approach for a neuromorphic agent or for our brains, right? We can't really replicate ourselves into the future and then train ourselves, with backprop. So Salier and Bengio propose a very elegant solution to that they call equilibrium propagation, or EPROP, to contrast with backprop. And in equilibrium propagation, what they're going to do is take advantage of the fact that these deep hopfield models are governed by fixed point attractors. You know the dynamics always flows to a fixed point. So imagine that I put my image of a cat in at the bottom, and I let the dynamics evolve to some fixed point, and I'll call that the free state on the left. And then I will put in the same image of a cat, but now I'm going to tweak that cat detector on top, that cat logic. I'm going to jazz it up a little bit. I'm going to just goose it a little bit, make it a little more cat-like. And what's going to happen is that cat detector, as I ramp it up, it's going to feed back into the network. So remember, the output is part of the dynamics, and it's going to turn on cat-like features, and it's going to make the attractor a better associator of cat images with cat labels. And so we can exploit that. So the idea is in the free state, we apply an anti-Hebbian rule, just a local learning rule that will make that attractor less attractive. Okay, it's going to make it less energetically favorable, shallower. And then we go to the nudge state where we've jazzed up the cat detector a little bit, and we're going to apply a local Hebbian rule. And we're going to make that attractor more attractive. We're going to make it more energetically favorable. Okay, we're just going to repeat this again and again. Again, my PowerPoint art is not very good, but you get the idea. And then by the time we're done, hopefully our attractor is now capturing everything. Our free state and our nudge state are the same. All right, so this is the basic idea of using local physiologically plausible learning rules to train deep hop field models, incorporate top-down feedback in a fundamental way as classifiers. So do they actually work? Well, another recent paper from Bengio's group shows, in fact, yeah, you can train a fairly shallow, just a two hidden layer deep hop field model on CFAR10. And in fact, performance for just 2 hidden layers is actually quite respectable. So these things work pretty well as classifiers. It turns out you can train them either doing backprop through time, you can unroll time, or you can just train them with equilibrium propagation, and you get the same, basically the same answer. And that we knew that from math, because we know that equilibrium propagation actually models backpropagation. They follow the same gradient to an excellent approximation. So we got very excited about this, and so a summer student, Siddharth Mansingh, a PhD student at Illinois in physics, and his advisor, Michael Teddy, and then I'm co-advising Siddharth as well, we decided to explore these deep hop field models a little more by looking at how they fail. In other words, we're going to attack these models with white box attacks, and we're going to try to understand under what circumstances do they fail. And so here on the x-axis, I'm plotting the amplitude of this white box adversarial attack, and performance is, on the y-axis. And so, and then we compared this to just a standard, what I'll call nominally equivalent feed-forward neural net. So that's just the deep hop field model, but we've taken out all the top-down connections and we just turned it back into a feed-forward neural net. And so what we see is that deep hop field models are actually doing pretty good. They achieve basically the same performance accuracy as a feed-forward neural net, which is shown in blue, but the deep hop field models are far more robust. So if we then take our feed-forward neural net and we make it robust by adding adversarial examples to its training set, we get the red curve. So that curve turns out to be more robust. There's an asterisk I can't go into, I don't have time, but I think actually, anyway, but that's not the final story. I think the deep hop field model is actually going to become more robust once we fix some problems. But of course, as we make the feed-forward neural net more robust, it loses accuracy on the clean data. So what we see is deep hop field models, they're kind of exciting. They actually give us, they're actually better, really, than nominally equivalent feed-forward neural nets. They have the same accuracy and are far more robust. Okay, so these deep hop field models are also explainable. In other words, when they make mistakes, we can understand the mistakes. Okay, so this is not the funnest picture to look at. I realize CFAR images are, they're like this. So the original image is a frog on the top left. And then in the top row, we're showing the adversarial attacks, adversarial examples at different strengths, going from left to right. And we see that for the equilibrium propagation model, when the classification shifts from a frog to a deer, well, yeah, for strong attacks, we've added antlers to the frog, okay? We've turned the frog into a deer. Whereas for the feed-forward neural nets, we're not really seeing that. We're not really seeing the same degree of semantic attack. Okay, so what's going on? I don't know, but one possibility is, so physicists tell us that these spin glasses have this kind of funnel hierarchical organized ground state. So what we wonder is if perhaps these deep hop field models, which are similarly frustrated, might be composed of sort of these funnel-shaped, hierarchically organized attractors that maybe correspond to different object categories or subsets of object categories. So that's our working hypothesis, but we'll have to check that out. So in collaboration with some colleagues at the Pacific Northwest National Lab and at Intel, We've also found that, okay, so these are hopfield models, in this case, that are configured to solve a sparse coding problem using the locally competitive algorithm, or LCA. But what we find is that these hopfield models, when implemented on neuromorphic hardware, are orders of magnitude faster and lower power than equivalent digital representations, as long as the models are sparse. Okay, they have to be sparse, and there can't be that many neurons active, and they can't be firing that often. But as long as that's true, and we can still get essentially the same answers, it's going to be possible to run these models in real time on neuromorphic hardware, I believe. Okay, and finally, this is just hot off the presses. A student sent it to me last night. I don't think I even know what this slide entirely means, but I'm going to tell you what I think it means. Okay, so it turns out from the Bengio group, they've extended their equilibrium propagation algorithm and make it continuous in time to make it more realistic and a little more easily implementable. And it turns out these continuous time equilibrium propagation models can be approximated with SDDP-like rules, and that's what this is showing. So it looks like in the future we will be able to train neuromorphic hardware with these very interesting, I think, dynamic deep hopfield models with SDDP. Okay, so in conclusion, I think that these deep hopfield classifiers they're better, faster, and cheaper. They're better, they're more robust, they're more explainable. They incorporate, or can incorporate, really all major brain pathways and numerous physiological mechanisms. I find them very exciting, so that's really why I want to talk about today. I think these are a real candidate, I think, for a breakthrough. And so I think we have 25 years. I actually feel pretty good about 25 years. I'll take that bet. I just don't want a case of port. Okay, if it's fine wine, that's beside the point. But I think we could make a new wager. I was going to say synthetic neuromorphic agent in 3 years, but it's an ambitious timeline. I just want to define what I mean by synthetic cognition. So I think synthetic cognition is best illustrated. So I appreciate, so this is one of Bruno Olshausen's signature slides. I appreciate him sharing it with me. And so, okay, sorry, you said, man, I'm done. This is my last slide. Okay, so I really like this jumping spider. I have jumping spiders in Santa Fe on my front gate. They're very clever creatures. So what this researcher has done is they put the jumping spider on a leaf, and then they hung a fly from a higher leaf. And they sort of hung the fly to where the jumping spider might not really be able to jump directly to it. And what the jumping spider does, I think, is just gorgeous. It walks down the stem, actually walks in the opposite direction of its target, climbs up the trunk, and then walks out on a higher branch, and then it gets itself a nice meal. It can do this, So to me, this is cognition. Okay, this is biological cognition. This is what we should be targeting. Sorry, but ChatGPT is a waste. It's just a distraction, in my opinion. I'll put it this way. We should learn, we need to crawl before we can talk. Okay, so thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We have time for, one or two quick questions.
Thank you. I saw that you compared mainly convolutional neural networks to the hopfield models. And I was wondering if you had any plans to compare visual transformers, which are known to perform better these days. And I would also like to mention that I know of works that compare visual transformers generally to hopfield networks. It's an archive paper.
So, my take on transformers in general is that they're incorporating long-range lateral context in a clever way. And in some sense, I think the success of transformers is by capturing this one major neural pathway that had been left out of machine learning. So deep hopfield models, I can add long-range lateral symmetric connections, and I believe probably accomplish much the same thing, and we are investigating that. We are running models right now to see how much improvement we can get by incorporating long-range lateral context. So, for example, if one neuron is detected an edge, a local edge, but we might want to know, is that edge, part of a horse-shaped contour? Is it part of a car-shaped contour? That's where these long-range lateral connections can come in. And I think they're going to be as powerful in deep hopfield models as they've been in machine learning. My take. I mean, I could be wrong, right? I mean, that's a guess, but.
Thank you for your talk. I have a question. You compared your model to spin glass model, which surprised me because my understanding is that your model is a determinist, basically deterministic convergence to some sort of attractor, but spin glass model is random. So those are two completely different dynamics. And do you expect this biological cognition to be more random or more deterministic?
So, you know, I haven't done physics in a long time, so I really, you know, I'm not going to be able to give you a completely educated answer. But my understanding is that really what makes a spin glass is frustration. It's the fact that there is no ground state that does not have some frustrated bonds. And this is going to be true in a deep hopfield model as well. There is going to be no ground state that does not have frustrated bonds. And I think that, I believe, but I don't know enough. You know, that makes them sort of in the equivalence class. But I'll end by saying that I suspect that if this is true, if this is going to be the future of neuroscience, it means that physicists are going to become a lot more relevant than they have been in the last decade. You know, the next decade is going to belong, the next decade of machine learning is going to belong to physicists, neuroscientists, and a few computer scientists because they code really well.
Thank you so much.